Howdy, howdy, everyone. This is Sharon for another Conscious Sharon moment. And so, with these Conscious Sharon moments, again, these Conscious Sharon moments are, I call them life hacks. They are aha moments. They are observations of myself, of the world, of people, and pretty much things that sometimes make me go, hmm. But if anything, they allow me and you to be able to really look at ourselves and say, and again, give you aha and revelations about things. So, about yourself so that you can move in life differently. You can have a better understanding of yourself and also of others. Because the more we understand ourselves, the more that we can understand others. And I would say this too. Sometimes the more that you can understand others, you can understand yourself. Because what I realize within myself is that sometimes I may not be able to recognize something within myself regarding a certain behavior or something like that, but I can see it in someone else. And then I start to apply it within myself and look at myself. And it's like, oh, especially if you notice either behaviors or someone say something. So, again, this is what this conscious sharing moment is all about. And, as I've said before, we can't separate ourselves. Everything is connected, is interconnected, with each other, and then interconnected of how we connect with ourselves. And we need both. We need, of course, ourselves, but also the relationship that we have with others. And one thing I would say too is that once I figure out that all relationships lead back to how we relate to ourselves in some form or fashion, either areas that we may need a little bit more nurturing, some compassion for ourselves, or even to have empathy for others. And so, again, it goes back to us. So, welcome, welcome, welcome to another conscious sharing moment. And so, remember to like and share and also comment. So today, conscious sharing moment is focused on emotional imprints. Emotional imprints. And another word for that, for those individuals who, I say, study from a yoga philosophy, is that they're called samskaras. And with these emotional imprints, and this is, you can say, to a certain extent, where epigenetics kind of come into play to a certain extent, because these are emotional imprints even from our ancestors, where we may have a way of behaving and not even understanding why. But also attached to those emotional imprints are a lot of times they come from, again, our ancestors, like our parents' parents, but also our life experiences. Like most people have heard of, the ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences. I like to call it advantageous childhood experience. And the reason I say that is because it's not always adverse. Because a lot of times when people think of adverse, it is like something that happened to someone. And that's not totally true to a certain extent. It's not always regarding abuse and neglect, but it's, I would say, to look at emotional imprint, because it can be positive or negative. But what it is when it comes to emotional imprints, I like to say that it's something that really allow you to have an emotional response to something, and it stays in your body. And that's where it's something positive or negative. And with the emotional response, a lot of times, especially when we're young, especially before the age of 5, we don't have the words for it. We don't even know what's going on. And to be honest, sometimes even as an adult, because I can even recall, I may not always had associated with a certain experience, but it's kind of like, well, what's going on with me? And so again, these emotional imprints, again, they're imprints within your body. And so one way of looking at it is one, again, a lot of times we may notice it in someone else first, but a lot of times people may have what I call a knee-jerk reaction, like something happened and they will go off on you or respond in a certain way. We may call it projecting, and things like that. Most of the time when someone react in that way is usually some type of emotional imprint. And with emotional imprint, it can be any experience because, like even when we talk about trauma, there's a big T trauma and the little t trauma. The big T is the one that we know about, like when it comes to, of course, abuse, severe neglect, when it comes to, especially I say any event or experience that can lead to PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. The other thing that I want to say about emotional imprints, that they're subconscious, like you don't even know that it's there, and it allows you to have a belief or a value that you probably don't even know that you're having, that you may act in a certain way, behave in a certain way, respond, or shall I say react in a certain way. And so most of the time we don't even know that we have, and then sometimes we do, because you hear people say, oh well, I've always been that way. Because again, the more that I'm paying attention to myself, the more that I learn about myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I was like that. This is how I've been moving about the world. Like sometimes I'm not trusting people or thinking certain things, or it's more so for me, it's more so my behaviors and not a thought. And so again, these is emotional experiences. It can be as simple as, like, we always know, let's say if there was someone that was that meant something to us, and they don't have to have transition, but let's just say it could be, let's say it's a grandparent, someone hadn't seen in a while, or had transition and they wear a certain perfume, and like every time you smell that perfume, it reminds you of that person. And so you get that. It's like, yeah, that. And sometimes you'll say, oh, that reminds me of such and such. And then there are other examples of, let's say, when you see a rose, or let's say there's a certain car, and you dated someone and it didn't end well. And every time you see that car, like, I can't stand those cars. The other example could be like when it comes to young children, most children, I'm not sure what kid doesn't, always trying to put something, in the electric outlet. And, most parents like, oh, stop doing that. Don't do that. And just by saying that, that can pretty much erupt, activate, trigger the nervous system. And so with all of the examples I just said, that's what all of those things doing. It is impacted the nervous system in such a way. So if you smell something that is pleasant or see something that is pleasant, that's going to pretty much kind of keep you in what we call the rest and digest, part of the parasympathetic nervous system. But if it has, some other effect where it's not so pleasant, then that will activate, the fight, flight, freeze, in which we're accustomed to that because kind of that survival mode. And a lot of times we're living in that and don't even realize it. So in saying that, with these emotional imprints, and in saying the thing about the same scars, is that we all have it. We all, even when even when someone like have an absent parent, or a parent that especially a parent that wasn't emotional there, because someone can be physically there but not emotionally there. But even if it's an absent parent, it will cause an emotional void for you. And so you can walk through life, you're thinking that you're attaching to people, but to a certain degree, you may not be. There could be a disconnect, and you may not be able to see it. And so of how you're interacting with someone, or how someone interacts with you, because like I said, we can always see it in other people first, more so than you can see it within yourself. And this is why self-care is so important, so we can sit with ourselves when we're sitting, sitting with ourselves, and we can really have a self inquiry about what's going on. And, you've heard me say it before. It's like if we're asking or saying something to someone at least 3 times or more, we need to sit with ourselves. It's like, why is this bothering me this much? Why is this, impacted me this much? What's going on? And then at the same time, if someone is coming to you or coming to me, with a concern or something, regarding something I said or did, or whatever it may be, or didn't say or didn't do, because those impact us as well, in that that I need to sit with that too, because I may have some blind spots within myself that again, because of the emotional imprint, I may be reacting or responding in such a way that is causing them to respond in a certain way because of their emotional imprint. You kind of see how it works. And so no matter where we are, this is not just in our home life, it's where we are in life, meaning wherever I am, whether you are at work. And so let's say there's a supervisor who've had, someone in their life who used to yell a lot. And so with that person, if their boss, or even if one of their workers raise their voice, they may use their authority in such a way. So this is where this is why it's so important, whether you're in therapy or not, some way, some fashion, to always, always, always to have that self inquiry, to really sit down with yourself. Because when it comes to these emotional imprints, sometimes they can be no joke. And when I say that, I'm even talking about myself, either of how I'm perceiving something, or even how someone may be perceiving me, meaning that the way that I may be reacting, in such and such way, in that, it's that way. So um, when you really sit with yourself and look at yourself in such a way, you can go back to those, because again, it may not be a memory, but your body remembers. That's the thing to remember about emotional imprints, is that it's your body responding to something that you may not even know that you're responding to. And again, you may be able to see it within others. And this is why it's so important to have embodiment practices. To me, once I discover this, I'm like, it is a disservice to anybody, especially someone in therapy, if the therapist is not um, encouraging, teaching a coping mechanism. It's really a way of life of having embodiment practice. It's like, oh, we're sharing. Well, what's an embodiment practice? Embodiment practice, I would say anything that helps settle the body. And so it can be breathing, that helps settle the body. It can, definitely, we know about yoga and doing the asanas and doing the different poses. It can be dancing, it can be type of martial arts. It can be drumming, it can even be listening to music, because listening to music, it helps with the vibration. It's the vibration of the music. And most of the time, depends on what it is, you may be moving your body anyway. So one way of looking at it is anything that helps move the energetic body, your energetic body that's within you, because it helps move those emotions that you don't even know that's there. If you do know that it's there, then definitely continue. And like for some people, let's say they can have a really upbeat song, and that can allow the full, I call it, expression of that emotion to pass through. And then sometimes some emotions are just so stuck. I just say it takes multiple times. So in all of this, when it comes to emotional imprints, stamp scars, is that to not just sit with yourself in self-inquiry, but also to move yourself so that those emotions can move. Because when they're stuck, oh my, they can cause so much problems. But anyway, I appreciate you listening. Make sure you like and share this, and let me know what your emotional imprints are, and what embodiment practice shall I say, what embodiment practices that you do to help with your emotional imprints, especially the ones that may not be pleasant. So again, thank you for watching this conscious sharing moment.